Hey there, welcome to the latest episode of the Campus Comics Cast. This is Dan Brown, and I'm joined this time by
Scott Reed.
And we got a few things to go over this time. First off, though, we want to remind everybody that this coming Saturday, October 24th, will be the latest Campus Comics mini-con that we're hosting.
Number 4.
We've had a few of them lately, and they've done really well. We've had a really good turnout at them so far. And so, Scott, you'll be there, right? Selling your wares?
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have some other kind of local vendors set up, and we're going to have a few sales going on. I think Mike's going to do the $5 for select hardcovers and $3 trades. We're going to have statues at 40% off, which is a really good deal. A lot of people took advantage of that when we did that before. So if you've been eyeing something, now's the time to come get it. We're going to do buy two, get a third one free on bundles. And I think we're going to be doing some 50 cents on our dollar books. So we still have a pretty good selection of dollar books. We got a lot in there. Just kind of remind everybody too, like before, get there early. People come in, swoop stuff up. So it's definitely the earlier the better to get there. And that is at 816 East Main Street, Suite B in Carbondale, Illinois. And as always, we are open Tuesday through Saturday, 11 to 6. Usually the mini-con will wrap up around 5-ish, just because everybody wants to kind of load up and get going when the store closes. So, Again, get there early. And you can find us on Facebook and Twitter, and the phone number for the store is 618-457-6011. Again, if you want to call for you, come out, And again, we just kind of ask, because of the mandate and everything, that everybody wears a mask and kind of, socially distances there. And again, the store ain't that big. So just, kind of be aware, of everybody. And so, Scott, we want to continue looking at the Vigilante series now?
Absolutely.
So we are on issue 19. Mm-hmm. This is just after the Alan Moore two-parter that we had. And a big header here at the top of this issue is special issue, Adrian Chase quits. So kind of a spoiler there. But again, don't be listening to this if you don't want spoilers for a 35-year-old book.
Yeah, no kidding.
So this issue is called Ups and Downs and is written, again, by Marv Wolfman and with Paul Kupperberg helping out on the dialogue. And we have Dennis Cowan as penciler and Rick Magyar. I always want to say like Magar or something. I don't know what it is.
I don't either.
Yeah, as the inker on this one. So the story starts out with Vigilante fighting a karate guy because it's the 80s.
Yeah. Well, I would say if you ever wanted to know what Vigilante fighting Shang-Chi would be like, then this would be the book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's kind of that going on here.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a few kind of flashbacks going through this story, and so you kind of have to Tarantino the story together here as we go through. But this opening sequence is Vigilante fighting on top of the roof, and we're kind of getting some backstory here of like there's a gang war with these two, I believe they're Chinese gangs in the city, kind of going back and forth, and there's this whole subplot of the Tong, the mob, sort of backing one of the gangs, and then the other gang says, no, they should be backing us. But again, it's like, what are they? So it's the Jade Tigers versus the Red Dragons. Not the most creative Asiatic names you could come up with, but, it was 85.
Hey, it's better than what the Yellow Claw,
Yeah,
so.
for sure. So then after the sort of fight scene, we get a sort of a peek of the home life of William, who was the guy that Vigilante was fighting, kind of going home, and his father sort of berating him for not living up to what he thinks he should be doing, and his father's sort of this self-made rich man, wants more for his son, sort of thing. And then we kind of cut back to where he's still fighting Vigilante, but then we're sort of getting a flashback from Adrian Chase's point of view, where it's his first day. He is now going to be a judge. It's a subplot we've had running through the book for a while now. This is the day he's actually kind of putting on his robe and becoming a judge. And again, his vow that once he becomes a judge, he will quit being the vigilante. You have anything you want to bring up at this part, Scott?
No, I think you've got it covered so far. So
yeah, I mean, it's pretty. We get a lot of pretty straightforward action here, with him and with Vigilante and William kind of fighting, and we're kind of getting some backstory on both the characters. And again, just this, bottom of page 7, we see William and some of his friends kind of practicing their martial arts. And William is just drawn in these very sort of standard karate poses. Like, I could see the artist just finding like a brochure on karate or a book or something that shows these specific poses, especially kind of with that high kick. That was just like something you saw all the time back then with sort of the 80s karate craze. And I just noted too on the bottom of page 8 where William kicks Vigilante. They're in a grocery store, and he kicks him into a shelf of canned goods, but the way it's colored, it almost looks like he's laying in a bottle of prescription pills at the bottom for some reason, just the way the colorist chose to do that. But then we get another flashback from Adrian's point of view where he's like in bed with Marcia, kind of talking about what's going on and him becoming a judge and everything. And then we're back to the fight of Vigilante and William kind of running through the streets, still fighting in what is the present. And so just there is a header at the top of most of the pages that says memory, that lets you know, hey, we're cutting back to a flashback. Otherwise, this is pretty jarring as far as what's happening in the present and what is the flashback. And it's flashbacks of 2 separate characters, so there's a lot of back and forth in this issue. And again, as I was reading this, I thought it was kind of confusing. I think when you get to the end, we realize why the story's formatted this way. But again, now William's father kind of telling him he disapproves of what he's doing. And, William totally not taking that to heart, just being stubborn and, young and wanting to do his own thing there at the end. But, it has led up to him fighting Vigilante here. So the Tigers have found the headquarters of the Dragons and show up and attack them with the intention of like impressing the Tong as that they should be the gang that they back. We see a shadowy figure who is a member of the Tong shoot William's friend. And then the reveal there is, and William throws a sigh through the shadowy Tong figure, sort of Bullseye and Electra style, where you see it kind of poking the back of his jacket. Again, pretty sure sighs are never that sharp.
Nope.
They're more of a defensive weapon. But again, it's sort of this thing in pop culture where people think they're knives or something, and so you see them used that way a lot. But again, the reveal here is that the Tong figure is William's father, and that he has, basically killed his father now during this. Then we get another showdown with the Vigilante and William. Vigilante finally breaks out his nunchucks, which he's done a couple times, but not very often. But again, we get sort of a nunchuck fight here.
Yeah.
2 of them. But then William basically has the drop on Vigilante before his father sits up and shoots him, which is like, I don't know. I guess I understand he disapproves of his son, but I can't imagine a father not shooting Vigilante at this point.
No kidding.
Scott, what about if this was one of your boys?
No, I don't think I'd take that shot. So.
Right. So kind of the moment that was teased on the cover here is on the last page, where Adrian decides to retire his Vigilante persona, and we have him for some reason on the street in his shorts, tossing the vigilante costume into the trash, which I assume is right by his apartment here because he's walking up the stairs after he does it. Again, if that's not incriminating evidence, I don't know what is. But after he walks away, we see another pair of hands reach into the garbage can and take the uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the end of the story here. What'd you think of this one, Scott?
Well, two comments, and that's actually more about the ads. So going back to page 8, where you're talking about him sitting in the bottle of prescription pills,
right?
There's a bunch of ads on the next page, and of course one of them is "What is a ninja?" And then the other one is a self-defense kung fu karate mail-away booklet, which has one of those very, very generic poses that you mentioned.
Yeah.
So they maybe got the pose from the ad, but and then on page
again, sort of standard ads you saw a lot back then. There was a lot of that kind of stuff back then, you know.
Oh yeah, and then the ad after page 17, where we get one of the early ads for Crisis, 50 years in the making, which we'll be able to talk about Crisis a little bit here in a couple of issues. So
right, yeah. The other kind of notable thing about this issue is in the letters column. So now we've gotten to the part where we are now in the real world. We are in sort of post Bernie Getz, where this has happened a few months ago now. It's starting to make its way into the letters column here. There was apparently a Nightline episode kind of talking about all this, and I looked it up to kind of see the timeline, and that was right around Christmas of '84. This is cover dated July '85, so it probably came out around May. So again, takes time, especially back then to, for probably the episode of Nightline to air, and then somebody to write a letter to a comic book and that kind of thing. But again, Vigilante definitely becoming more relevant at the moment. And when I looked up the timeline there, I realized one of his attackers was named Barry Allen.
Oh,
which I thought was kind of a weird kind of twist, weird coincidence thing, in real life.
Oh, for Getz, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
one of the guys that attacked him on the subway was named Barry Allen.
The other thing to say about this one is, Wolfman just basically plotted this, and we got Cooperberg doing the dialogue. Mm-hmm. And I really feel like the dialogue for these issues here, and then once we get out of the Wolfman plots, I think this book improves dramatically.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not quite to the level of the Alan Moore,
right?
Two-parter, but it's a lot better, I think, story-wise. For a while it was like a sludge to get through it, and I didn't struggle as much with these issues as I did with some of the earlier ones. So.
Yeah, then it makes you wonder, was that an editorial thing where they're like, no, Paul's going to come on and help you dialogue, or was he getting behind on deadlines? Did they need to bring him in,
Well, you got to feel like it's something to do with Crisis at this point.
Right. Oh, true. Yeah, that's a good point. Because, they're definitely building up. He's working on Crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely going to be the better seller than Vigilante. So it would be much higher priority for DC at the time. So now going into issue 20, and here on the cover we've got Vigilante fighting with Nightwing, even though Vigilante just gave up being Vigilante.
Mm-hmm.
What's that about?
Yeah, didn't last long, did it?
Did not. So here on the first couple pages, we've got a pretty, I want to say, cartoonishly violent scene, even for this book. And we've got some gang members attacking some people who are just kind of passing through their neighborhood coming back from a concert. And we see Vigilante show up and just murder everybody pretty gruesomely, for this book. And it's just really kind of brutal, just kind of throwing the old rules of Vigilante out the window with this. And this issue is called A Dream That Just Won't Die. And again, we've got Marv Wolfman with Paul Kupperberg scripting, and then Todd Smith and Rick Magyar on art. Then we turn the page and realize it is a dream. Adrian Chase wakes up in the middle of the night and has had this terrible dream about like what he has done as Vigilante, even though he's kind of given it up. He's having trouble sleeping. He turns on the TV, and there's a news report now of what he just dreamed, like happened in real life. So now I think he's making the assumption here that he is sort of, I don't know. I don't think they ever get real as explicit with this as they should have, in that he believes he's kind of doing this unknown to himself, unconsciously, or like maybe he's developed a second personality or something like that, some sort of dissociative disorder where he is still acting out as vigilante even though he has, decided to give that up. Uh, then we have a scene of Marcia at her office, kind of talking about Chase becoming a judge and kind of talking with her coworkers about him. And then she goes to see him, and now he's on his office floor, like in his robe now, really upset, just sort of can't control himself, not sure what to do. And then there's a sort of montage page of him kind of getting through his day and, like, just barely holding himself together, it looks like. Then we go to that night where him and Marcia go out on a date. And apparently you just sit under a tree and cuddle when you're at a Ramones concert. That's what they do, I guess. Then we've got some more, hey, this isn't a Comics Co. book with them in bed afterwards. And then we do see kind of Vigilante out on the streets again now. And the cops are trying to talk him down. They have him surrounded, and I think this is the first time we've seen the police sort of explicitly give their approval of Vigilante. Mm-hmm. And again, these are just like uniformed officers. This isn't like Captain Hall or anybody that we've had in here. But I'm trying to think, what does he say to him? Oh yeah, we're glad to have you.
You'll get a fair shake.
We know, he knows we think he's righteous. And then the cop that says that is trying to talk him down. Vigilante just blows him away, basically, as the other cops fire on him now as he gets away. You have anything to say at this point, Scott, with any of this?
Just, you've got, like you talked about the cartoony, bad guys there in that first spy sequence. You got a Mr. T without some teeth. And
an eye patch.
Yeah, and then, the guy with the bullseye on his forehead, which is actually well before the Daredevil movie.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Where that kind of came in, but yeah, it was the art is okay, but it misses the mark a few times.
Yeah, well, I think that first dream sequence too looks really cartoony, and I imagine that's intentional on the artist's part, because it is a sort of over the top dream sequence.
And like on page 4 where Chase is standing in the mirror, the way that's the cross hatching is on that, it looks like he's wearing fishnet stockings coming out of his underwear. and then he goes from being, it looks like he's wearing briefs there to he's doing push-ups, and now he's in boxers. So it's just like, I don't know.
Oh yeah, weird.
Somebody needed to catch some stuff like that, but anyway. Right. That's nitpicky. So
yeah. So then again, Adrian is having these dreams of kind of still killing people as Vigilante. As we cut back to Vigilante on the streets, like, yeah, I don't even know if this guy is supposed to be a pimp or what the deal is. Yeah, I mean, you kind of get that impression, but it's never said. So it looks like Vigilante's just shooting some random guy on the street. I don't know that we say anything about who that character is.
I assumed he was like a mobster or something with the black shirt and white tie,
Yeah, but again,
what if say? Yeah,
that's just what that dude wore. Mm-hmm. But after he shoots this guy, he gets tackled by Nightwing, who's now decided to appear. And again, last time we saw Dick Grayson in the context of Vigilante, he was still Robin, and it was sort of at the beginning of the series. And, his first appearance in New Teen Titans and all that. Mm-hmm. So now Nightwing is saying, you've gone too far. I'm here to put you down. Not, realizing what's kind of going on here with Vigilante. We get sort of a chase scene with him where Vigilante pulls someone out of their car and steals it. Nightwing follows him on his motorcycle. And then Vigilante crashes into another car as he jumps out, sort of causing a wreck on this bridge. And then Vigilante eventually knocks Nightwing off the bridge into the water below. And then it cuts to Adrian Chase's house where he's home, and Nightwing bursts in the window now, saying all bets are off as he is like drenched from being in the river. Again, you got to think it's like what, probably at least a half hour to get to Chase's house. He could have dried off a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Before he got there. But
Maybe
again,
it's the sweat from the effort.
Right, sort of a nice cliffhanger though.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle of this, do you have anything else you want to say about this one, Scott?
I guess other than Cyborg was in what, issue
3 or something like that?
Yeah. So this is the only other crossover we've had with the Titans.
I think so. And again, you would assume they would try to put more of that in there, just because as Marvel Wolfman and Titans was such a good selling book back then. But again, I can see where they don't really fit into Vigilante's world that well.
Well, I feel like this Nightwing appearance made more sense than the Cyborg appearance.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Cyborg really felt like, hey, here's a Teen Titans character we're throwing in here just to kind of get eyes on the book.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of going back, you brought up some of the ads last time. This time we have after page 4, we have an ad here for the Kenner Superpowers action figures, which were new back then, where you can just send this off and choose whatever action figures you want for $5.99 each. I would do that in a heartbeat. I'd do that right now.
Yeah.
I'm ordering all of them. And then we also, at the bottom of that page, we have an ad for the Supergirl movie now on video cassette. That was probably crazy expensive back then because tapes were not cheap.
Yeah, well, I had a note about in one of the next couple issues they got an ad for some tapes, and I couldn't believe how expensive they were. So.
Oh yeah, it was definitely the tape industry was definitely centered around rentals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you had to, tapes were like $90 or something back then because they wanted to encourage rentals where they could charge you every time you watched it, as opposed to just owning it. Now I don't even have to leave my couch.
Yeah, no kidding.
Watch a movie. We're living in the future.
You ready for 21?
I think so.
All right, so issue 21. I didn't even write down so Shadow of a Madman, and this, as far as I know, the first issue where Wolfman has no credits for any of the writing. He is listed as editor on the book.
Well, I think aside from the Alan Moore issues.
Right. Okay. Right. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. Yeah, definitely. So we've got the issue opens again with Nightwing in Chase's apartment. At this point, Nightwing is convinced, because it's the Vigilante going around killing people, that Chase is responsible because he does know Adrian Chase's secret. And Chase is basically attempting to defend himself by saying he has no idea what is going on. So, of course, fisticuffs ensue, and the fight spills out onto the street. So we then transition over to a scene with Marcia, and, of course, Chase had left Marcia's apartment to go home. And she's concerned about what's going on with him, so she calls. He doesn't answer the phone, so she gets dressed apparently to kind of head that way. So we'll transition to another scene where we have this small-time thief, and I don't think this thief is ever even named.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So anyway, he's just breaking into this apartment because he learned from the person who cleans it that they got all of them are out of town this week, and this one guy's got $1 million stamp collection. Because that'll be easy for him to, sell.
Yeah, and I like how this $1 million stamp collection's in a tiny wall safe.
Yeah, so he, but the owner apparently came home early, so discovers a thief and holds the thief at gunpoint. Well, the thief basically throws his flashlight at him, is able to get the gun away. The gun fires, and it kills the owner of the home. So now this thief apparently has some priors. Before the owner of the home came out, he had called the cops. So as the thief runs out into the hallway, he shoots 2 more police officers. So apparently he's a really good shot because he's fired 3 times and has 3 kills. Anyway, so he basically escapes. So we go back to Nightwing fighting Chase. Anything you want to add before we get back into that part?
No. Again, this maid gave up a lot of information to this guy in a bar one night.
Yeah.
Lucky for him, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Or now in hindsight, not so lucky, right?
Well, for the thief, but yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to bring up about these kind of issues too is this is not modern Nightwing. This is OG disco Nightwing costume that we have here. And so it's kind of hard to take Dick Grayson being super intimidating in the disco Nightwing outfit. You know what I mean? It's like he's not Batman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I just don't. I mean, I'm not saying I don't like that costume, but it's not the most intimidating thing, especially in DC and Gotham.
And in a mature book anyway, to either.
Yeah,
so.
for sure.
So Chase in this fight with Nightwing is actually able to get the upper hand, and he steals a motorcycle and is able to get away from Dick Grayson. And he's basically he vows he's gonna figure out what's going on. So we go back to this thief who's still running from the scene of the previous crime, and he crosses paths with the squad car, who apparently already has the APB and the description of the thief, even though the two cops who saw him are dead. What he looks like. So now he fires his fourth shot and is able to basically wreck the car with a single shot. So now he's 4 for 4 firing at this point. But witnessing these events unfold is the Vigilante. Then we go back to Chase, and he has decided he's going to hide out at Marsha's apartment. Of course, Marsha is not there, but who is there? Nightwing, because since Nightwing knows all of his secrets, he knows where he might have gone, and he's able to actually beat him there. So again, fisticuffs ensue. The two are fighting. Somehow the TV gets turned on though in the course of the fight. They bump the on button on the remote control, and they're showing what Casablanca, I guess, I think is the movie that's playing. So that fight goes on. So we'll go back to the thief. He gets discovered by the Vigilante, and the Vigilante basically shoots him. He falls off top of a building, and then he is seen having killed the guy, and of course they start chasing him. So back to Chase and Nightwing, they're still fighting, and at this point during the fight, they break in on the television, which is now conveniently on, reporting that there's been another sighting of the Vigilante. So that basically brings the fight between Nightwing and Adrian Chase to an end. And Chase says he's going to figure out what's going on, and Nightwing says you better, and you only have a limited amount of time before I'm going to get involved again. So the issue wraps up with Chase returning home. He finds Marsha there, and Marsha wants to know what's going on, but Chase says that he'll have to tell her some other day, and that kind of wraps up issue 21. So anything else to add to issue 21?
Just, I don't know. I guess this is more of a pop culture kind of thing, but and again, I'm a big fan of Mystery Science Theater 3000. And in some of those movies, every now and then there was a thing of like they would show, like whenever there was a movie on TV or something, it would be Casablanca. And it's like, and that's happening here in this comic too. So I don't know if that was just a shorthand for a while. I mean, I think you can make the argument of like memorable line in a movie, but like there's a lot of movies that have recognizable memorable lines in them. Yeah. I'm not sure why Casablanca was like the standard for so long or what that was about back then.
I wonder if there was something to do where it wasn't like it didn't have a copyright anymore or something, or you would think so, but
yeah, there's no way it didn't. But yeah, it's just a weird thing.
And this is before Warner Brothers owning DC, right?
Man, yeah, well, I can't even keep track.
Yeah, and is Casablanca even a Warner Brothers?
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's, yeah, he knows. So,
yeah. But again, just a weird thing I kind of noticed that you see here and there.
I had not known that before, so.
Yeah.
All right, so issue 22.
Yep.
So issue 22, we basically get this newspaper, flying across the screen. We got the electricity in the sky. So this is, I guess, an unofficial Crisis on Infinite Earths.
No header on the cover like the other tie-ins. But again, Wolfman's book, he's definitely going to be referencing the big story he's doing right now.
Yeah, but Wolfman's not involved in this one other than being editor.
So, good point.
Yeah, but I think, I like the fact that Cooperberg tied it into what's going on. So it almost gives you like the what's going on with the regular people while Crisis is going on type of a story. So despite the crisis, there are still individuals that are taking advantage of the situation. So we have some thieves who are breaking into a jewelry store. They leave with some jewels and rings and necklaces and all that fun stuff, and they are met outside by the vigilante, a very oddly drawn, proportioned vigilante for this issue titled Night Souls.
Yeah, I picked up on that too, and you really don't see that throughout the rest of the book. It's just that one shot for some reason.
Yeah, it's very, it's just a little strange. So this is Todd Smith with art. Steve Mitchell was the inker. Yeah. So, but anyway, so he vigilante basically kills all three of the thieves. As he leaves the scene, the police arrive, and he basically comments that he doesn't really want to hurt the police. They're trying to do the right thing, though we know from past issues that if he feels threatened, then he has there's nothing to stop him from shooting a cop if he has to get away. Scene takes us back to Chase's place, which of course is still trashed from the Nightwing fight. He's still with Marcia, and she is still insisting that he tell her what it is that's going on. And they have a fight, which even has Marcia slapping Chase. But she starts to leave. Chase basically pleads with her to stick around, and I guess they have an initial reconciliation there real quick, and we then transition over to Chase back in his chambers at the court building. Anything to add at this point?
No, I just feel like, as far as the Crisis thing goes, it feels like that was just in every book DC did at the time. Even if it wasn't tying in directly, you would see like the red skies and that kind of thing. So it's not that surprising. Again, Vigilante doesn't have anything to do with Crisis really, plot-wise or anything. But I just feel like that was probably an editorial mandate, at the time, because Crisis was such a big story for DC.
I felt though that it fit in really well with how this story was scripted. Mm-hmm. So I didn't feel like it was taken away or pulling the story down, So it was like an event that took place during this. It would seem fairly natural. Yeah. So I think that's a props to Cooperberg for doing a good job incorporating that in. So. Yeah. So moved on to the court building. Chase is in his office, basically lamenting how someone has taken over his role as a vigilante. And then Chase gets called into court. Here we get to learn just a little bit about the vigilante. So he's hanging out in an abandoned warehouse. He decides to hit the town for the evening. So we transition back to Chase, who's arming himself to go out looking for the vigilante. As he leaves, Marcia is coming up to his place. And of course, she sees that Chase is now carrying a gun, which upsets her. So she leaves. So he's not having good luck with Marcia here in these last couple of issues. Here's another scene where we get to see what's happening for regular people during Crisis. So there's a food shortage. Kind of feels like March of this year a little bit. Yeah. So there's some people trying to, go to the grocery store, and there's this gang member that's basically, keeping them from going in and getting any food. He actually doesn't kill them, just threatens them. When they say they'll leave, then he says, well, it's good. I don't have to waste 3 bullets because they're not easy to come by anymore. So we transition inside the grocery, where we see that they have tied up the owner of the grocery store. And Vigilante is able to sneak in and kills the 6 gang members. We don't ever see that he released the the owner of the store, but we would have to assume that he did. So we get to the final scene of the issue.
I'm gonna say he didn't.
You don't think so?
Yeah, because when he finds him at the beginning, he sort of rationalizes that he'll be safer tied up in there.
Yeah.
So he leaves him. So I don't see him going back.
Going back? Okay. Yeah. Maybe not. So we'll be tough on the guy.
It's not said either way, but the impression, like, if you can rationalize leaving a guy tied up for his own safety, well, he'll still be safe when I'm gone, and he's still tied up.
Hey, Indiana Jones did it to her in Raiders of the Lost Ark, remember?
Right.
So in our final scene, Chase is driving around town looking for the vigilante, and he somehow ends up at Marcia's apartment. So Marcia reluctantly lets him in, and then Chase basically spills his origin story to her to wrap it up. We get a little blurb that says the electrocutioner is going to be back next issue.
Yeah.
So I was kind of surprised. I was expecting a little bit of a resolution to this new vigilante here at some point in this issue. I was surprised we did not get that. So, so yeah, what else you got for 22 to add into that?
Not much. I think that's probably about it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll see. You know, again, they're kind of stretching out, what the deal is with the new vigilante, who it is, and all that. Again, and of course, we'll get into that in future issues. We'll see. But yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. Again, it seems like somebody that's maybe a little more unhinged than Chase. A little closer to what I thought the book would be originally.
Yes.
Just more of a Punisher style character. Again, we'll see where that goes and how that works with him being a judge now. Again, I think there's the whole issue of he was okay with being the vigilante when he was a lawyer, but all of a sudden now that he's a judge, he can't do it anymore. Like it's still the same conflict of interest and ethical issues.
Yeah, it's a higher standard when you're a judge than when you're a lawyer.
Yeah, I don't get that. But again, whatever. That was what they did with the book.
Yeah. We talked about the ads. Like here, they have the Superpowers collection,
right?
Which is 4 VHS tapes, and they're $24.98 each.
Yeah,
and I assume they're probably 30 minutes apiece.
I have some of those. I found them years later at a Kmart, like still new. But they were episodes of the 60s Filmation cartoons.
Okay.
That had been rebranded for Superpowers. So it's not the Super Friends Superpowers cartoons, which you would assume they were at the time. But yeah, it's some of the 60s. And those are still some good cartoons, the 60s Filmation stuff. There's still some good Batman and Superboy cartoons and stuff on those. And some of those are on DVD now.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, just totally not what you would think that is, mid 80s, Superpowers cartoons.
Well, you want to grade these issues?
I will say fine overall for these issues. There's some ups and downs in here. I think, again, we're starting to see a transition here in, behind the scenes and in the book, with the new character and everything. I don't know. It's like we've had a lot of world building kind of tore down over the course of the book, where his team is completely gone. We're seeing less and less of Captain Hall and some of the recurring characters, and it's got but he's a judge now and he's abandoned the persona. It's like I kind of want to see more world building coming with this new vigilante. So again, we'll get into that and see how it progresses as we go through this.
Yeah, I'm at a very fine minus. I think I was at about a fine on most of the Wolfman issues, and then of course the Alan Moore issues were above this, but I'm enjoying these a whole heck of a lot more than I did the early issues. So if it had kind of started like this, I probably would have been been a little bit more positive about the series. Of course, it'd be a letdown if it transitioned over to the Wolfman stories. So,
right. Yeah, I think it's just the transition for me. It's like, okay, what are we building to? It's kind of what I'm waiting for right now with this.
Well, and I guess, at this point, you got to feel like all the writers had a little bit of freedom knowing that Crisis was coming, and anything that they do can, be undone at the end of Crisis, so.
Yeah, but again, Crisis wasn't the hard reboot that people seem to remember it as either. There was still a lot of loose ends left.
Yeah.
A lot of continuity was just kept the same. And again, there's this perception, and again, it's kind of like that with every reboot DC does, is they never go all the way with it. But aside from some origin stories, there wasn't a big change in most of the DC books.
But it was the opportunity,
Yeah,
they could have written in some minor changes.
Yeah.
At that point. So.
But and again with Vigilante, it's like how far do you go with that with this sort of street level character?
Yeah.
And again, there's ways to do that, of course, but.
Yeah, and like I didn't care for like the team that he had built, with JJ and
Right.
it just didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me.
Yeah,
So
well, again, it felt very 80s TV hour-long action show, It felt like a Magnum PI or an A-Team kind of thing. It was definitely a Stephen J. Cannell production, whatever that was.
So you ready to move on to Future Imperfect?
I think so. So, right now Marvel's doing the Maestro miniseries, which is kind of going into the origin of that character. So we thought it'd be a good time to kind of look at the Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect story, which kind of sets up that character. And I've been reading that Maestro miniseries as it's been coming out right now too. It's really good. It's worth checking out, especially if you're a fan of this story here we're about to talk about. But yeah, it's a pretty good book Marvel's doing right now that I don't feel like anybody's really talking about.
Mm-mm.
But again, it's Peter David writing it too, so he's got plenty of Hulk on his resume.
Definitely. So I don't know how we didn't even talk about how we were going to talk about this.
Well, let's just talk about it.
Okay.
So,
okay, you want to go first? You go first.
Well, here's the thing. What year is this? This is like 92, 93-ish, I think.
I think it's 92.
Okay.
92. Yes, it's copyright on it.
Okay, so it's Hulk Future Imperfect, 2-part miniseries from then. It's Peter David writing with George Perez on art, and we get some pretty detailed, pretty crazy George Perez art throughout this.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of mileage on his line work there throughout. But we're kind of introduced to we're kind of thrown into this story.
Exactly.
We were talking about that earlier. We kind of missed the first act of this or something. Where we're in this sort of future world where it's this sort of police state, and Hulk shows up, coming up out of some rubble, and this is I guess this is Smart Hulk sort of era.
Mm-hmm. This is Professor Hulk era, yeah.
Professor Hulk that we're kind of dealing with here.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been contemporary at the time of this. So we have him, there's this resistance leading this rebellion against the leader of this, world, and it's the Maestro, who we find out is a future version of the Hulk, this still seems to be Professor Hulk in the future. I don't feel like he ever regressed back to, Hulk Smash or anything like that in this, and he is now sort of the tyrannical ruler of this world. And I'm trying to think. So we got a backstory throughout this too of like humanity kind of wiped itself out with nuclear war, and this is kind of what remains. And the rebellion kind of takes Hulk in, thinking that he's their chance to stop the Maestro. And we're introduced to an elderly Rick Jones at one point, who lives in Easter Egg Central here. Where it's basically a I don't know if trophy room is the right term, but definitely sort of a museum, I guess.
Museum is, yeah, because since everybody who had those things is now deceased, so
yeah, so it's sort of a museum of the fallen heroes and some villains and things, but just a lot of Easter eggs and sort of visual business going on here. You can kind of there's a pretty good 2-page spread here where you can kind of see different things like the Silver Surfer's like cracked surfboard, a lot of helmets of different characters. And I think some of the most gruesome stuff in here is there's a back wall where you can see the Beast's pelt basically strung up on a wall. And there's some shelves with urns and things on them. And there is a skull back there that is colored red. So I'm assuming that is the Red Skull's skull in there. I'm not sure what else that would be.
Yeah, I don't know what else that could be either.
So yeah, and it took me a second, but this is also the era of the white Vision. So we see the Vision's head in a jar in the background too, and when he was still in his sort of white look phase. I'm not sure if there's a name for that or not.
I guess that's Warlock beside the Vision's head from New Mutants.
Yeah.
Yeah. Professor X's chair. Yeah.
And Rick Jones is going around in a early '90s era Professor X chair.
Yeah, it looks just like the chair from the animated series.
Yeah. So yeah, so we go back and forth with what Maestro's up to and sort of enslaving the people and kind of crushing this rebellion that is led by Rick Jones and his some of his family, and then just these other people who have kind of risen up against him. We get a good scene though where the Maestro and his men have sort of located the rebels' base, and instead of going down into it, Maestro just digs his way underground to where they're at. And again, it's like, yeah, he could do that. You know what I mean? It's just like one of those things where it's like you never really think about that, but it's like, yeah, he would do that. And I like too. There's a couple panels here where his army is kind of putting up supports in the tunnel down there. Again, it's just a lot of attention to detail in this book, and I feel like that's something like most comic books wouldn't even think about bothering with. It's just like, yeah, here's a tunnel, run down it, but just little things like that are just throughout this book. And again, I don't know if that was something Perez had or David had in the script, or if Perez just drew that, but just really good attention to detail with that sort of thing.
Well, so much of the backgrounds and stories now are just drawn in. I mean, they're not even included in the pencils. If they're even doing pencils, it's just all thrown in.
Right.
Just after the fact, with just like you need a building. Oh, let's go. Digitally build a building and stick it in there in the background. So
yeah, and if you're a fan of like George Perez detail, this book is for you. It's just,
yes.
There's no I don't even know if there's any empty backgrounds in these panels.
There are very few.
Very, very little. But just, when there's rubble, there's just so much detail in it and a lot of motion with it. And then just sort at the end of this first issue here with the traps for the army coming through, just like the acid spraying on them and the lasers and different things. And, again, just Maestro just walks through that stuff, just kind of showing how powerful he is and how the Hulk has become, by this point. And again, we get the end of the first issue here where we've got this nice face-off between Hulk and the Maestro when they're both saying Dr. Banner, I presume. And kind of letting everybody know like this is Hulk in the future.
Well, I bought this story off the newsstand from Campus Comics back whenever it came out. And I don't guess I have read this since it came out, because I did not remember this at all. If I had, somebody said, "Oh, hey, write down the plot for Future Imperfect," I would have been, I don't know what I would have written.
Right.
It definitely would not have been this.
Right.
It's just so different than what I remember the origin of the Maestro being.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was more. I think I remembered it as being more taking place in like the regular Hulk timeline, not him shifted forward 100 years.
Oh yeah.
Which, by the way, would put it at the time of this book at 2092, and this is the same year that 2099 started.
Oh yeah.
So this would be taking place 7 years prior to 2099.
Right.
But and then of course you mentioned earlier before we started recording that there's no way that now that this would be a 2-part series.
No.
And really, I feel like even then it should have been a 3-part series. I feel like the first part should have been, how did Hulk get here? How did introduce us to the world? They go to the present, convince the Hulk to come back, and then that's where this book actually should have started at.
Yeah, this story really moves. Like there's no twiddling your thumbs here.
There's no wasted time here. So.
But I'm thinking too, like around this time too, we also had, was it Thanos Quest? That was another sort of prestige format 2-parter, right? That they were doing. So I wonder if that was just a thing of Marvel at the time, where they're like,
well, a lot of companies were doing. I mean, Marvel and DC both were doing a lot of prestige books. I mean, I think they learned that from Dark Knight. So.
Yeah. I feel like DC was doing a lot of one-shots like that. It wasn't as many miniseries, but I don't remember them doing a lot of 2-parters.
And of course, it had the higher price point too. This was a $6 book even back in 1992. So, because it's embossed. Ooh.
Yeah. Right. Tell you what, that doesn't come through as well on the digital version, it turns out.
No. So, I was fortunate to. Peter David was at Louisville, Kentucky a few years ago, and I went down and took my 2 issues of Future Imperfect and had him sign those. And I'll retell the story that I told you before we started recording. Um, Back in the day, he used to write for Comic Buyer's Guide, and he had this a regular call. Thank you, yeah,
You're welcome.
column in in Comic Buyer's Guide. And once he was doing a comparison of like the one of the early Toy Biz line. He was talking about Captain America. Ooh, he had this, action launching shield, and Spider-Man had all of his webs. And what did the Hulk get? Hulk, I got a rock. So it's like he's telling this story of these action figures standing around each other talking about what accessory they got, and all the Hulk can say is, "I got a rock." So I had him sign it. I've got a rock
Right.
on the first issue. So
I'm not sure where it's at, but I've got that rock somewhere. I have that figure. That first wave of Toy Biz Marvel superheroes figures from back in the day. Um, so in the second issue, there's a good fight with Hulk and Maestro in here, and it kind of culminates with Maestro snapping the Hulk's neck, and the page goes black after that. And so when you're reading this, you're like, did he just kill the Hulk?
You're wondering,
Like, what happened here? And so we get something that I don't remember ever seeing in a Hulk comic. Is he's kind of laid out for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And Maestro's taking him back to his sort of palace here to recuperate, and we've got Hulk in a pretty big neck brace. And kind of, Maestro takes him around a little bit, kind of showing him his world. And it's like I can't remember ever seeing Hulk recuperate.
No.
In a comic before. But again, this is something different. He's going up against himself, an older version.
Well, and if you're reading Immortal Hulk now, he has, acid thrown on him, and it eats away a third of his body, and then within a few panels, he's back to normal,
Yeah.
So it's a different take on his regenerative powers.
Yeah. But again, I think it's really interesting. I don't think it weakens the character or anything. I think it's a really cool story point.
Mm-hmm. We'll even say, Maestro knows that the neck break is one of the things that takes him the longest to heal from. So he kind of comments on that as part of the story. So
yeah, it's definitely a know your enemy sort of thing there. Well, speaking about Hulk's vulnerabilities, we do get a showdown with Hulk and Maestro in the sort of Museum of Fallen Heroes here, and Hulk throws Captain America's shield into the Maestro. And he says he's going to cut Maestro in half with it, and he guts pretty deep into him there with it, it looks like. So It looks like, that's something else that can be used to hurt the Hulk. And I do like the little bit we get later where Maestro is trying to lift Thor's hammer and cannot do it.
Still, he's gone, and I still can't lift it. Yeah. We talked about this a lot with the Vigilante, but you notice that this book also does not have a comics code on it. And you can definitely tell because of some of the content. Basically in this book, the Hulk is raped, And
that's happening in co-books though too.
Yeah, but that's true. But and then a lot of the some of the content is a little bit more mature. There's not any nudity or even any language in this book. But it definitely has some more mature content, so I can imagine it probably wouldn't have been approved by the code.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason for this format, though, I think, is that they would not have to do a code-approved book.
Right. I feel like some of the fight is pretty brutal, too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how violent the Hulk books were back then, or if this would be considered more than that. But it doesn't particularly feel that way to me as I read it, but...
They wouldn't have been. There wasn't a lot here, but even the regular Hulk book wasn't to this level. You weren't regularly seeing trails of blood and all that good stuff. So yeah.
So over the course of the story too, we are told that they used a time machine to bring Hulk to the future.
Doom's machine.
Yeah, that's the thing. It turns out it's Doom's time machine, and so Hulk ends up sending Maestro back to the past to kind of ground zero of the gamma bomb test. And it's like, he's right next to the bomb. He's not, off in the distance like Banner and Rick Jones were. He is right next to it, and he is obliterated here at the end of this.
Mm-hmm.
And the story kind of wraps up with Hulk spreading Rick Jones' ashes using Captain America's shield. Like he throws the shield to spread the ashes. Again, it's always felt like sort of, and it just ends at that point too. It's always felt like kind of a weird ending to me, where I feel like there should be another page or two here, but the story just stops. Again, I mean, it kind of goes with the beginning of where like we're just thrown into the story. We're kind of thrown out of it too here at the end.
Yep.
I don't know if that was an issue of page count, him just trying to cram everything in, or how that worked necessarily. But
well, I guess that starts with the story. They kind of through the course of the story explain how he got there. So I guess the readers has to say, okay, I guess he took Dr. Doom's time machine back.
Yeah, he probably would. That would be what would happen.
I did like the T-shirt on the last page where it's like my friends rated Maestro's palace, and all I got was a stupid T-shirt. But yeah, this was nothing like I remembered it. And I don't even know what I would have written down if I had to have told what I thought this story was about. But man, I don't remember it being like this at all. So
and I didn't read this when it came out. I read this probably, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago when I found a couple copies of the books. And but yeah, again, I'd heard about it, knew it was supposed to be a good Hulk story, sort of a highlight of David's run and that kind of thing. And you don't hear about a lot of great Hulk stories, and this is one that's kind of always popped up. So yeah, I definitely wanted to read it.
Hulk is one of those characters that's often a better supporting character than he is a main character, Yeah. Which, I offend people whenever I say that sometimes, but...
Well, tell me the top 10 greatest Hulk stories then, if you're going to dispute that.
Yeah, no kidding. So...
and it's not like Hulk's the only character that, that's the case.
No, there's lots of characters that are that way. So.
Characters like that.
Well, I think it's one reason why they moved to the Professor Hulk was because, how many Hulk smash stories can you tell?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good time. Well, do we want to rate this one?
Sure. Okay. I'd go very fine near mint. So, like a 9.0. I think it's, I don't know if it's lost some of its luster, especially with what they've done with Maestro since. But it's still a really solid, Hulk story, and I'm glad I held on to it.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna go near mint on this just because I can appreciate the time that George Perez put into this, and we're not gonna get something like this from him now. You know what I mean? He's basically retired. But yeah, I don't know the hours he must have put in on these 2 issues.
Yep.
So, and again, it's a good story. It's a kind of unique take on the hero kind of going bad, which you don't there's still the thing of like at the end where it's like, well, maybe this still happens. Maybe this is the Hulk's future, kind of thing. So, this isn't Elseworlds or a what if kind of story, this is just he's taken into the future and this is what it is, sort of thing. So now it's been a while since I've read Hulk the End. So and that was David too. So I'm wondering if that ties into the continuity.
I have not read that story.
Or how that would work.
I'll have to look into that because I've not read that story.
I'll have to go back and check on that because I know there is sort of some nuclear wasteland thing with that story too. But I feel like that would have to be after this. But again,
I feel like everything now for the Hulk is kind of being defined by Immortal Hulk. Because in the Immortal Hulk run, he's like the last thing alive in the universe. So. Spoiler. Not really, but yeah.
Good time though.
Oh yeah, it was good to reread that story after so long. So, well, The Boys.
I think so. Yeah. So again, we haven't had a lot of movies to talk about this year, or that many TV shows really. So, we recently watched the 2nd season of The Boys.
Major spoilers if you're.
Oh yeah. Well, kind of spoilers for all the stuff we've been talking about, I guess. We need to get in the habit of saying spoilers more, I think.
Well, I say more so for this. I mean, I don't feel too bad about spoiling, stories that are 30 plus years old.
Yeah, for sure. That's the other part of that.
Yeah, but The Boys is fairly recent, so
yeah, it's kind of wrapped up.
But it's been out, for what, a month and a half now, I guess. So
Well, I think the last season was the last episode was just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, but I mean, it started. They released like the
Yeah,
3 episodes, and
right.
then one, and there were what 8 this time.
Yeah,
So that have been 6 weeks. So yeah, so about a month and a half. So the first when they started releasing the
right.
episodes. So yeah.
I don't know. Quick side note: I'm getting tired of these 8 season, episode seasons from shows.
Well, it depends on how well you like the show. I mean, I know like sometimes watching that's like the CW Flash and Green Arrow, man. After 22, it starts getting a little. It's like, oh my gosh.
Right. Yeah, it just depends, I guess. But again,
Depends on the quality of the show.
yeah,
So The Boys is a fairly high quality show. So I would like to
right,
see 10 or 12 episodes, I think. But that being said, it's not, it's not something that I'm like, oh, I'm just dying to see season 3 either. So.
right. Well, the thing too with 8 is I think HBO was talking about the True Detective show, and they basically said like 8 is kind of the minimum you have to have to support like startup costs and things like that. So I think the economics of it are like the minimum you're going to get is 8 episodes of a season. So when I hear that, I always think, oh, this is the amount they had to do, kind of thing. So, but yeah, but again, that's not what we're here to talk about.
No.
That's just
Well,
me. That's just
would
me.
you rather have 16 30-minute episodes?
Mm, that's all you get done in those 30 minutes, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So
But I would prefer 13 to 8. I'll tell you that.
I think with this series, I think I would have liked to have seen about 2 more episodes. I think 10 would have been a good amount for The Boys season 2.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause I think at 12, you're gonna get you're gonna get some two or three filler episodes.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And I guess if they want to build the universe, then you kind of need those filler
Right.
episodes. But and with some of the talks of season 3, which I don't guess we should get into, but I mean they've got some characters coming that are supposed to be coming in season 3 that they haven't really mentioned or anything. So,
Right. Yeah.
um,
So
well,
yeah, I like this season. Did we talk about the first season on here? I can't remember now.
we had planned to, and we got interrupted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we had planned to talk about the first season. That podcast got interrupted, unfortunately. So we never ever circled back around to talking about that.
Right.
So by the time we got back to it, we just
watch season 1 before you watch season 2.
Yes, yeah.
Sure.
So I think if it wouldn't be too hard to catch up, with what's going on. I don't feel like, but yeah. Plus, season 1's not that many more episodes anyway, so. As a general comment, I'd say if you liked season 1, then you're gonna like season 2. So,
yeah, I think so.
It's kind of more. It's more the same. The second season still is not directly. I don't feel like it's directly tied to the comics.
No.
That was one of my big things about the first season is like, in the comics you have one superpowered group fighting another superpowered group. The 7 are fighting the boys. Well, in the series, the boys, other with the exception of I don't even know what her name is. I've blanked on her name all of a sudden. They don't have any powers.
Right.
So there really would be, I mean, at any time, Homelander could wipe them out.
Right.
So they have to rely a whole lot more on sneaking around than what they have to do in the comics.
Right.
So, yeah, I guess there's two big areas of focus. One is the son of Homelander, from his apparent rape of Butcher's wife, and he's like apparently the first person to get powers without being injected by Compound V.
Yeah.
So that's one of the big storylines, and he's kind of like the ace in the hole, I guess, for maybe in the future if Homelander goes really, really bad. They say if he turns, but as you can tell from the story, he's not the greatest guy anyway.
Right.
He's like their ace in the hole for down the road if they need something to go up against Homelander. And then we have the addition of Stormfront, who is initially portrayed as this internet savvy,
Right.
meme heavy, super powered, but by the end we learn that she's actually the original, recipient of Compound V, and she's like 100 years old, and she was married to the original Vought who came up with the whole thing. So she's basically the you know the start of it all, I guess. So
Yeah, a lot of differences from the book here, especially this season. The kid kind of being the big one. But again, I think it plays so well into the stories they can tell by having him in there. I think it's a kind of really interesting way to deviate from the books. And the other part of this is too, everything I'm saying here, it's like it's been years since I've read all this stuff. So it's like I don't remember it that well.
Well, okay, so in the comics, Butcher's wife is dead.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So I mean, that's obviously something that is majorly different because if I remember right, and it's only been like a year and a half since I read The Boys.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to read it before the series started the series started. So that's whenever I read it. But like the whole thing about that the boy's Dear Becky, right, is Butcher writing a letter to his wife, and apparently she died giving birth to the child, so so that's again just where this dramatically changes from the comic. So other than the character names, it really doesn't feel like The Boys to me, so
Yeah, well, it's definitely this. The show is not nearly as edgy as the comics, where the comics go pretty far with stuff that they don't do on the show necessarily. And I'm not saying that's a fault of the show. It's a different in format and media. I think is a big thing with that.
And I feel like we've talked about this before, but that's one of the things that's kind of the comic is so over the top on the violence and language and sexuality that this it's played differently, and because it's not so over the top, sometimes it feels worse. Some of those
I feel like there's things you can get away with comics though that you can't get away with in live action.
Well, and more effect wise, but I just feel because it seems, I guess, I don't know if realistic is the correct term, but like some of their hangups are more realistic, which almost makes some of the people seem a little bit more deviant than even what they did in the comics whenever it was so ridiculously over the top.
Right. Yeah. But again, I think if you just did a literal adaptation of those books, it would be ridiculous in live action. You know what I mean? And I think they're smart to kind of steer away from that as much.
Well, they probably just saw the effects budget to do it.
There's that too. And again, speaking of that, it's a great looking show.
Yeah.
I mean, for me in this season, I think the only things that were like maybe part of the movie scenes that they're filming when they actually show the movie scenes. Yeah. But again, you're parodying these movies that cost like $250-500 million now. You know what I mean? You're not going to do that on a TV budget. And then I would say probably the stinging of the congressional hearing towards the end.
Oh,
that felt like that should be in a bigger room. There should be a lot more people there for this kind of thing. You know?
Yeah. And that was probably, I mean, I guess that might be like the most disturbing scene of the series, So, and there's this unknown superpower. Now, who did you think it was? I don't know. Should we talk about that scene?
Yeah, we might as well.
Okay. Do you want to lay the groundwork, or do you want me to do it? Yeah.
So this is, the hearings on Vought, and again, they are able to get what was his name? Vogelbaum or something?
Something like that. He was basically one of the early guys with Compound V. So they got him to testify.
And then I think he's a congressman, right? That's asking the questions at the beginning.
Yes.
His head spontaneously explodes in the middle of the room. And then the man testifying, his head explodes. Then other just kind of random people in the room start having their heads explode.
Including one member of who was going to be a member of the Seven.
Yeah.
The guy who's going to replace A-Train.
Right. So again, not just the regular sort of civilian characters being killed off here.
Yeah.
But and again, a good scene of like at some point someone yells out "Save us!" to Homelander and Maeve, who are kind of in the middle of it, and Homelander's just kind of looking around, trying to figure out what's going on. But looking very detached, not really invested in what's happening around him.
And it is Vogelbaum. You were correct.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah.
But yeah, so what did you think about that scene?
Well, it was very surprising.
Yeah.
Now I was surprised just because, like, all of a sudden the heads are exploding, and of course, we had a teaser of that earlier whenever they had met up with their previous connection with the U.S. government, and I've forgotten what her name was as well.
Right. Yeah.
So there was that one scene where there was a head exploding.
Yeah.
But whenever, of course, there's part of it, they go to this asylum's not the correct word, but a place where they are experimenting on supers.
Right.
And we get introduced to this one character who basically can crush anything.
Right.
So I had decided that was the character who was doing this, because she had the ability to crush things. I thought she was crushing people's heads,
right,
exploding people's heads. So I was surprised. Yeah, I was surprised how that ended up resolving itself.
Right. Yeah, no, I didn't put that together. I was just thinking this is a new mystery character or something. You know what I mean? Or
well, I was wrong, obviously. So you were right. I was wrong. It was a new mystery character. So. Oh, and the reason why I couldn't come up with the girl's name and the boy is because she is just known as the female. So there you go.
But no, she has a name. Is it Kimiko or Kimiko?
Something like that. I just
in the book, she's just a female. They're not going to do that on a TV show in 2020, though. I'll tell you that right now. They're just going to call her the female.
So did you crave Fresca while you were watching the show?
I did not, and it's just like, was that the product placement they could get? You know what I mean? Does Fresca just not care?
I think that's just more because of, who really wants a carbonated grapefruit drink? That's what it tastes like, is grapefruit. So are you rushing out and buying this stuff? So I think it was playing off the weirdness of the cult.
Right.
That Deep and A-Train had kind of associated themselves with. So, yeah, I thought that was more why they chose Fresca.
Right. My thing is, like, why would Fresca agree to that portrayal? But there are some brands out there who will just, like, anything, they will take it.
There's no such thing as bad press.
Right.
I say, is Fresca even still on the market?
Oh, that's a good point.
I'm heading to Wikipedia right now. So let's
say is or was for Fresca.
Yeah. So introduced in 1966. It's been around since 1966. Holy smokes. Coca-Cola announced revamping packaging in 2018. First Fresca advertising since 2008. So I don't know. Maybe they're ramping it back up or whatever.
Fresca survived the coronavirus.
Yeah. It doesn't say that it's no longer being made.
It's out there somewhere, then.
Yeah.
The hard-hitting journalism you want from the Campus Comics cast, right
there
here.
There you go. That's right. We can search Wikipedia. We can search Wikipedia.
We're reasonably sure Fresca is still around.
Oh gosh. I don't think I had. I was checking my notes here. I didn't write down a whole lot of notes about the boys. I guess okay. So it's kind of ironic, that the big fight scene at the end for a series called The Boys is all girls,
right?
Because you have Maeve and the female, and man, I'm struggling with names tonight. Aaron Moriarty's character. Starlight, thank you. Yeah, our fighting Stormfront.
Right. Well, I did like how that kind of played into the sort of corporate appropriation of the sort of girl power thing. Yeah. The sort of girls get it done that they were doing earlier, in the media with those characters.
Mm-hmm. So then, and then Stormfront, basically has to run, but she catches up with, Butcher. Yeah.
That's the thing, though, too. You do get a boy at the end, kind of get the killing blow there. So
that's right. So, but it's so in that scene where Butcher is with Becky and Stormfront catches up with them and they have the boy, and Stormfront is basically threatening Becky, and then the boy they had been trying to teach him that you had to use your powers whenever you were mad, right?
Yeah.
To get his powers to manifest. And well, he gets mad at Stormfront and does a number on her, but as a result of that, I felt like whenever she got knocked back is what caused, her to rip
Right.
part of Becky's throat, so in the end, the boy is responsible for killing his mother,
Right.
which is kind of dark.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so we don't see good things for this kid's future. So
No, but again, this is also the argument I bring up when people say Superman's not dark enough or realistic enough or something. It's like I don't need trauma in Superman's origin story.
yeah,
You know
no.
what I mean? Because of stuff like this. But
Well,
again,
that's the point. You end up with Homelander
yeah,
or
exactly.
some of these other characters that says
Yeah.
Superman. So
But yeah, it was good, and she's still alive there at the end too. Is the other part of that?
yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
So
Yeah, so again, big change with Stormfront too from the books. We got some gender swapping kind of going on the show, and she's an example of that.
I'd forgotten that.
Yeah, and my thing too, when I heard that announced, I'm like, okay, well, what's that get you? But it's like, no, I feel like that plays in really well with her manipulation of Homelander throughout the story. Again, something you couldn't do with a male Stormfront.
Well, in the comics, they would have.
Probably, yeah, that's true. But again, he's also very much the comic version of Stormfront is very much on Front Street with his sort of neo-Nazi allegiances. It's not really that well hidden of a secret in the comic as it was with, the character on the show. So, it's like this is something where I'd like, yeah, if I could see why they made those changes to that character then, for this.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it all made sense. I mean,
right.
But it just like, I don't, again, it's just like it's an okay story. I didn't hate it, but it's like I'm not, I'm not like, oh, I wish season 3 were starting tomorrow.
Right.
It's like I got other stuff I'd rather watch, and then whenever I get around to it, then I'll watch season 3. Whenever it finally comes out. So
right, yeah. But again, that's also the thing of like, having read the comic, you know how that ends, and it's like, well, this isn't going to end like that necessarily. And again, we got a big change too with Black Noir, on here too this season. So kind of changing that character for sure and what his backstory is. So, because you're not going to have that twist that you had with him in the book.
Okay, you're going to have to remind me of the twist because I've forgotten it.
In the show, there's a fight scene where they kind of pull up his mask finally, and you see he's a black man underneath.
Okay.
In the books, he is a clone of Homelander. That's why he's always covered up. You never see him. And it turns out he was responsible for a lot of the things that they thought Homelander was doing. He was going out at night, perpetrating a lot of these atrocities that everyone thought Homelander had committed, including Homelander, to the point where he snaps and starts doing these things on his own because he thinks it is him doing them, when all the time it is Noir as Homelander going around doing this stuff.
I don't remember that. Is that late in the story?
Yes, that's like towards the end of the run.
You know what?
Towards the end of the book.
I wonder if I didn't finish it. I wonder if I only, you know what? I may have only read what was like free on Comixology.
Okay.
And maybe the last couple of trades weren't on there.
Okay, yeah. There's some stuff with Noah that really plays into the end of the book.
Now I got to decide if I want to read that or not. So.
Right. No, it's spoilers, I guess, for the comic, but
that's
But again, it's just like, and they hadn't shown Noah's face at this point, and it's like, is it him? Are they going that way? And they're obviously not now.
Yeah.
But again, it's like, where do you go? Because now it's just Homelander is just Homelander, on the show.
Yeah, he's just messed up because he's messed up.
Yeah. But it was also the idea of like Vought had their sort of remedy for Homelander if they ever needed it, in Noir.
Okay, so that's why this story is progressing a little bit differently with the kid, because I don't recall the kid in the story either in the comic.
I think I know what happened to the kid, but I'm not 100% sure in the comic.
Okay, all right.
I don't really want to say it in case I'm wrong.
Well, yeah, I mean, we know the kid was at least born because that's whenever Becky died.
I think Butcher took care of the kid in the comic is what happened, but again, I'd have to go back and double check.
Like I said, I didn't. Maybe I just thought I must have convinced myself that I finished all those issues, but I must not have, because and maybe I stopped because after oh the issues where they fake the invasion and go to the island, for their own hedonism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a little bit too much for me, and maybe I stopped reading.
Yeah,
Stopped reading it.
we find out what the annual summer crossovers are all about.
Yeah.
Yeah, the story that Scott's referring to is called Herogasm. If you want to look that up, it was a standalone miniseries separate from the monthly book.
Okay. Now, one thing about, and I feel like they did this with The Walking Dead as well, is because they diverged from the comic, they're actually able to tell like a different story.
Yeah.
That's one of the things, like I honestly, and I know I'm in the minority on this, but I feel like the Walking Dead TV series was much better written than the Walking Dead comic. Because the comic just got kind of absurd. I felt like, especially around, issue 100, leading up to issue 100 and a few issues after that. And that's whenever I felt like it jumped the shark for me and I stopped reading it. Well, so I feel like, Ennis, maybe if he has very much input on the writing on this, he can kind of look at like, okay, what did we did and what did we wish we would have done differently, or how can that give us a slightly different take on these characters, so we can be telling something based on our creation, but it be original.
Right.
Because I don't think I would have wanted, even if they could do it, a shot by shot remake of the comic.
Right.
Well, I'm certain I wouldn't have wanted that. So
yeah.
This is a little more watchable.
Yeah, side note for me with The Walking Dead, I've only read the first issue of The Walking Dead because I always figured, like, well, I'm watching the show. I'll go back and read the comic when the show's done. And now the comic is wrapped up before the show. But, yeah, I've never read The Walking Dead comic just because I wanted to enjoy their show and not be bothered with, changes in the minutia.
Okay.
But, yeah, eventually I'll go back and read the series.
Well, you could pick it up in color. Just put in your pre-orders at Campus Comics.
I tell you what, though, I like when they did those black and white episodes of the show, though, too. That was fun. I like those. They did there's a version of the pilot that's in black and white, and it looks a lot like Night of the Living Dead.
I guess I've seen that.
Yeah, and it's on one of the DVD sets, I know, and then I know AMC aired some of the episodes in black and white.
Okay, I've here the last few years I just been watching them whenever the seasons make it to Netflix.
Right.
So.
But there's also I don't know if they're still doing it or not, but there was a fan thing too where people were taking the episodes and converting them to black and white. Also, it really gives you Night of the Living Dead vibes seeing the show in black and white like that.
Well, are you going to grade the boys?
I'll say very fine for this season. I really liked it. Again, it could have been a little better. I could have more episodes of it, but yeah, I thought it was really good. I'm interested to see where they go with season 3. What's going to happen with Huey kind of walking away, for an episode, I'm sure, before he's back in.
Well, if they're only having 8 episodes, they can't have him, stay away too long. So
yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm at a fine on this. I mean, I liked it. I didn't, it's not I'm not like super pumped about it. I've already said, it doesn't, I don't feel like it's something I'm just like dying for season 3. But I will watch season 3 at some point whenever it comes out. What did you think about them not releasing it all at once? A lot of people were upset about that.
I don't know. I'm all right with that. Especially just because there's not a lot of stuff coming out right now, first off.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with them kind of dragging it out a little bit. I think we're going to see more of that as, with streaming sites in general kind of moving forward. Yeah. I think Netflix has really gotten burned by doing that in some cases where people will drop their subscription as soon as they binge watch a show over a weekend.
Well, didn't Netflix just recently announce that they're killing their 30-day free trial?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason why.
For sure.
Yeah, I kind of prefer it. As a general rule, like whenever, when Daredevil got released, I couldn't sit down for 10 hours and watch that straight through in one shot. And then there's just so much risk of, things getting spoiled.
Right.
I like that. I like that they did 3 episodes initially. and then one per. So it didn't take, it didn't take 8 weeks to get through it. It took, 5 or 6 to get through it. So I kind of like that. Like I'm trying to watch Hellstrom, and it's all out there, but I'm not, I've only made it through one episode, and I've had time this weekend with this other stuff. I don't want to sit down for 10 hours and watch, Hulu.
For the first few Marvel shows on Netflix, I watched them all in the first weekend.
I did too.
Until we got to Iron Fist.
Yeah. Well, I even Iron Fist, I think I got through in the first weekend. I think maybe it was Defenders. I don't know. I probably got through all of them in the first weekend, but I would have liked to have spread those out just a little bit. Yeah.
Well, the thing too is like, okay. Oh, so like first season of Westworld. Mm-hmm. So again, that was something, HBO, it's weekly. So again, me and my coworkers are like, hey, what's going on? What's your theory? You get a lot more involvement that way. Mm-hmm. There was a podcast I was listening to at the same time about that, where they're like kind of go through each episode and kind of throwing out theories of what's going on. And so I feel like you get that with a weekly show, as opposed to like, here's everything, I've watched it all. Mm-hmm. I know what the twist is by the end of the weekend. There's no time for discussion and, kind of involvement like that with a show you binge like that.
And we've ran into that problem here on the podcast too, where it's like, well, two of us will have seen something and somebody else is only halfway through or hasn't started it yet. And it's just like, I don't know. I for stuff I love, like Daredevil, like, I probably would be like, crazy waiting on the next episode. But I think overall, I would prefer to see that more slow release myself. So, did I rate it already?
I think so.
Okay, I think so too. Fine. There, all right. It's fine.
Yeah, I think that's about it. You got anything else you wanted to talk about this time?
I think I'm covered at this point. So
I just want to remind everybody this Saturday, October 24th, we're having the next mini con at Campus Comics. Scott will be there. I'll be there. We'll hopefully have a good turnout, have some more people. Again, haven't seen a lot of people this year with everything being so weird and shut down and everything. So it's funny. I'm kind of running into people at these and catching up with folks. So yeah, come by, come early, get some good deals. And that will be at 816 East Main Street, Suite B in Carbondale, Illinois. And there should be an event on Facebook for it. I know Mike, the owner, was having some trouble with that the other day. Hopefully that got straightened out.
It is posted.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be a co-host to it, and for some reason I couldn't accept the co-host invitation.
Oh, weird.
So, but it is up. Just search for Campus Comics Minicon 4, IV for Roman numeral 4.
Right.
Yep.
And that's this Saturday, so get there early. Probably be wrapping up around 5-ish or so, because Scott will want to go home by then.
Well, it's Mike that wants to be home.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
I want to go home too. There is that. So yeah, find look up the event on Facebook. And Scott, where can people find you?
Burgcomics.com, BURGcomics.com, eBay, Facebook, Instagram, all the fun places, and of course at Campus Comics on October 24th.
Right. And this is Dan Brown, and you can find me online at Detective651 on Twitter, Instagram, MIT Public Store, which will, holidays are coming up. There's going to be some sales coming up for that. Check that out. And you can find me at Campus Comics this Saturday also, and most Saturdays. But be sure to come out for the Minicon.
Yeah, we're on, yes, we are on 83.
Okay. Yeah. So, crazy.
That is, I know. We just have better to do with our time. What?
No, it looks like you're done with this.
Oh, I'm just holding the comics, so I don't say anything for a little bit. You got to come up with all the elegant things to say. I just gotta,
it's just funny.
be quiet until it's my turn.
What? it looks like you're done with this. Oh, I'm just holding the comics, so I don't say anything for a little bit. You gotta come up with all the elegant things to say. I just gotta, be quiet until it's my turn.